Hi class, welcome to Research Methods, and this is our video for a walkthrough on the sample description homework assignment. We're going to start by going to Canvas and to our modules and navigating to the homework sample descript assignment. In here, it gives just the little overview about what our purpose, what our goals are for this assignment, and our list of materials that we need. You need the lab sheet, the data set, and to make your table, if you want to use the Excel to make your table for this assignment, the Excel file is looped in there as well. So let's get started. Make sure you download files and save them in a place where you have access and you know where that's at. And then we'll open up the lab sheet. So again, our purpose with a sample description is to inform our readers about the characteristics of the sample data. And we use basic summary descriptive statistics, measures of central tendency and measures of spread to do this. We also want to include some graphics to help convey to the reader the nature of the sample. It gives a good overview to see it in a picture form. So again, your prep work is to access the data file. If you're going to use the Excel file, grab that if you haven't already, and put them someplace where you can access. And we're going to open the SampleDescript.jasp file, the data file, with JASP. So again, you go to JASP first and navigate to wherever you keep your files, and then open up the data set. We come to our data screen, right? Our data panel with our case ID, group ID, what year in college, ethnicity, gender, age. We have all of the variables there. And again, our variables of interest are typically the personality traits, cognitive ability, and perceptions of research methods at time 2. But today, we're also going to look at some demographics as far as to help describe what the sample makeup is like. So let's check out our first goals here. We want to write a paragraph telling the reader about the sample, like how many students were in each class and what was their average perceptions of research methods. We want to include demographic information, like what is the makeup of the sample in terms of male, female, or non-binary gender orientations, their college year, their age, those are basic demographic informations. So how do we collect this information? By requesting the descriptive statistics that are appropriate for each type of variable, being is it a categorical or a continuous variable? So let's start with categorical variables. What we want to report with categorical variables is going to be how many and what percent of the whole. So let's do that for the first couple here. We're going to get the descriptives input panel in JASP. So clicking descriptives opens up our input panel, and now we want the categorical variables, and there'll be 4 of them. We don't need case ID because that's just a unique identifier, so we can say, hey, did you see case 106? Let's see what's going on there, that kind of thing. It's just like a name, but we don't need to report it in the summary statistics. We do want group ID because that's basically what class the student was in. Were they in the morning, the mid-morning, or the afternoon class? We want college year, ethnicity, and gender. So that's our 4 categorical variables that we want in the variables box. And we want to go get the frequency tables checkbox. It's down here a little bit. And now that adds extra information over here in our results. And what do we want to find out in the results? That's a lot of times the hardest part, is identifying what in the results am I really after. So we're looking at the results panel, and for each categorical variable, how many participants were in each level of that categorical variable, and what percentage of the whole did it represent. Let's take a look. I'm going to fold this over so that we can just look at the results panel here. So when we were talking group ID, a categorical variable, we can see that there were 25 students in the early morning class, 26 students in the afternoon class, and 29 students in the mid-morning class. So that's our count for each of those levels of the categorical variable called group ID. Now, what do we mean by percent of the whole? So when we talk about the sample looks like 80 students here, because right now this was the beginning of the term. The research methods instructor had fewer students at the end of the term, right? But here they're reporting the 80. And what percent of the 80 students were in the early morning class? Well, 31.25%. Those are the things you're reporting about that group ID variable, or what class they were in. 25 students were in the early morning class, and that represented 31 if you round to one place, 31.3% of the sample was in the early morning class. 32.5% of the sample was in the afternoon class, which was 26 students, and 36.3%, 29 students, were in the mid-morning class. That's exactly the information you want to tell your reader regarding what class the sample was representing. See what I mean? Let's take a look at gender. So when we have gender, we had 20 students of male orientation, 59 students of female orientation, and 1 student in non-conforming orientation. And the percent of the whole that each of those groups represent. So representation of the sample is according to these summary statistics when we're talking gender. Now, how would we go about writing that up? Well, here's an example using gender. Students in the research methods class included a diversity of male, 20, 25.0%, female, 59, 73.8%, and non-conforming, 1.3% gender orientations. Notice that we were able to get the frequency and the percent of the whole just in that percent, in that parentheses, narratively. And you don't have to do it that way. You just want to make sure you have both how many and what percent of the whole they represent. For your percentages, those you take out to the tenths place, but for number, it's a number. It's not going to go decimal places because you don't have 20.5 males. You just have 20, right? So what other categorical variables did we request? Well, we have ethnicities: Caucasian, African American, Hispanic, Asian or Pacific Islander, multi-ethnic, and that's it. So you would report each one of those levels within the one categorical variable of ethnicity. For college year, we had 1 freshman, we had 22 sophomore, 36 junior, and 21 seniors. So again, notice our categorical variables is where we are reporting more like a mode, a count. If I said, what is the mode of college year? you would look for the most occurring value. It looks like the mode of the sample is junior, whereas the mode of the sample in terms of what class they were in, the highest one is mid-morning. So you can do that with categorical variables, reporting the mode. Mean wouldn't make sense because if we said freshmen were 1, sophomore were 2, junior was 3, and senior was 4, and we took the average of that and get like a, I don't know, 3.25, that doesn't tell us anything. The mean is not useful with categorical variables. Okay, what's next on our lab sheet here? We need a graphic to help illustrate the categorical variables. When we're looking at a categorical variable, your best graphics are going to be a bar chart or a pie chart. So let's ask JASP to give us those. We'll go back to our input panel and fold down the plots section right there. So we want a distribution plot and we want a pie chart. And that way we can see what JASP does with that. We'll fold our panel back over and scroll down. So here's our bar charts. We have how many were in the early morning, how many were in the afternoon, how many were in mid-morning out of the whole sample. College year, ethnicity, and gender. For the pie charts, those get a little more interesting because we got colors. It looks more or less like the breakdown of the classes was rather equal. Like we had more in mid-morning, right? Is that the mode? Yep, that's the highest one. But it's not that bad. It's not that severely unbalanced, right? Whereas college year, that's definitely a lot of juniors. Or ethnicity definitely does not have a balance of ethnicities. So it gives us a picture of that sample as a whole and helps us see the makeup of it more than just the numbers. So that's why figures are helpful. Let's see what we have left on our lab sheet here. We want to save the figures, save the graphics you want to use as figures. That's easy. You just go to the figures that you want to keep and you can do the down arrow and save the image as a PNG, or you might even be able to copy paste it into your MS Word as well. I typically save the image. It's just the way I usually do it. And I think I forgot up here, I want you to start organizing your output. So you can edit the input panel title. So let's go there. Right up here at the top where it says descriptive statistics, we're going to edit it categorical variables. Give yourself an idea as to what this section is so that as we keep adding sections, you can see it easily. Okay, I think we're done with this part. Let's look at the continuous variables. For continuous variables, we want to report the mean and the standard deviation for each continuous variable. So first, we'll have a new descriptives area for the continuous variables, and we're going to add the word continuous to the input panel to keep our output organized. So a new input area. Keep things organized. And here we want 8 continuous variables. We're going to grab age, which is a typical demographic that we would report about our sample, the average and standard deviation of age. But then we're also going to want our study variables. So the personality traits, cognitive ability, and perceptions of research methods at time 2. Do I have them all? Yep, that's all the ones I'm after there. So age, personality, cognitive ability, and perceptions of research methods at time 2. Let's check out the results panel. So now we have one table. We have the mean all the way across for all 8 of those, and we have the standard deviation for all 8 of them. So we can see that the average age for the sample across all classes was 23.3. So 23.3 years was the average age of all the students in the research methods instructors data set, with a standard deviation of 7.5 years. So 23.3 plus 7.5 would be 1 standard deviation above the mean, and 23.3 minus 7.5 would be 1 standard deviation below the mean. In between those, that range would be 68% of the full sample, their age range there. But if we wanted to know the whole age range, we could just look at the minimum and maximum. The youngest participant in the study was 17.9 years, and the oldest participant was 61.0 years. So mean and standard deviation, when we're writing about it, you typically report to 1 decimal point, so the 10th place. Let's see what else we want out of this. So how would we write up narratively a continuous variable? Like I said, you include the mean and the standard deviation. And here's a couple of examples. These are 2 examples of the same variable of age. I could say something like, students participating in the class survey had an average age of 23.3 years, and then put the standard deviation in parentheses. Notice that the SD is italicized, and that there's a space before and after the equal mark. I could do it like this. I could say participants' age and give the mean and standard deviation in parentheses ranged from 17.9 to 61.0 years. Either way, as long as I get the mean and the standard deviation for each continuous variable, we're good. So what other continuous variables did we request? All of these. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, cognitive ability, and perceptions of research methods at time 2. Alrighty, now we need a graphic. How would we help our readers see this distribution of scores for a continuous variable? Well, we typically use a histogram. So let's check that out. We're going to fold the plots section down on the input panel and look for basic plots called distribution plots. Oops. Right there. So turning on that, now we can check out the results. So there's age. We have a lot of this age, looks like 22, 23, someplace between 20 and 25. is most of the participants in that study. Would you call this a positive skew or a negative skew? That's something you could tell your reader on the distribution of ages. We can look at all of the histograms for each one of the personality traits, cognitive ability, and here is the outcome. This is what the research methods instructor is interested in, is his outcome, right? So Professor Bob would probably be really interested in knowing about this distribution, that it's got a skew. What type of skew does it have? And this would be a good one to save and use for your appendix on the write-up. Okay. Alrighty, let's see what's next. So before closing JASP, you want to make sure to export your results, because that's a file you'll need to turn in for this homework. You can export different ways. You can come up to the top and get to export results right there with that little drop down arrow. You could also use your menu and go to export results there. Just remember where you put it so that you know which one you're uploading for your homework. Alrighty, so what we need to do next is look at these tables and graphics. You can create a table of the means and standard deviations quickly so that your reader can look at all of them like on the quick. And this would be done mostly with your continuous variables when you want means and standard deviations in a table. It doesn't make sense for categorical variables. And then you also need to include 3 figures in your appendix as well. Now in APA, your appendix is started on a new page, and tables and figures go each on a separate page, but tables come first. So you let your reader know when you're writing it up, hey, go see table 1 for these descriptives. But when you get to your appendix, it would be the appendix in table 1, and then the new page for whatever your figure 1 or table 2, stuff like that. You can check out APA section 7 for tips and examples on both the tables and the figures. So to submit this, you're going to submit your results file and your write-up, and it's in the write-up that your table and graphics are, or your figures. For your APA, your basic page setup information, you're going to have a level 1 heading that says method, followed by a level 2 heading that says sample description, before you start writing the little paragraph about your sample. You do want to let your reader know about those tables and figures, right? So you'll say something like see table 1 or see figure 1 when you refer to whatever your table or graphic is on. And again, when you get to that new page appendix, you want a level 1 that says appendix, and then you have your table 1. Check over what should be italicized and what not, and check out the examples in section 7 of APA for examples for tables and figures. Let's go back and look at the assignment one last time, just in case. All right, that looks good. The rubric is down here to give you some ideas on what you need to make sure you include. And that is it. Have fun with the assignment, and if you have any questions, please feel free to send an inbox message or post them on the course Q&A discussion board.